This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show. Scarecrows frightened of a cloud that's laughing boys. I am a Batman. I am a Batman. Shine and signal, come out to play. I am a Batman. I am a Batman. Bring it on, Batman. Jump out your cave. 'Cause I am a Batman. I am a Batman. Shine that signal, come out and play. I am a Batman.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 244 of Dublin Dane. My name is Tim, and joining me, even though he forgot we were supposed to record today, is Dublin Dane himself.
Sorry, I was in Dublin.
Yeah.
Not literally, but in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is where we got the name.
Exactly.
Just finishing up some stuff before the Ubisoft announcement, whatever they're going to be announcing. Yeah. So that's why I forgot.
So I guess it is kind of fitting that would be the reason why he forgot to record it, since, like you said, it was the origin of our name this year. So I guess I'll let it pass.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So.
Good to be back with another episode, as normally scheduled release, like the last few ones, but a lot of cool stuff to talk about on this one. So I think we should just dive right into it. And one thing we're definitely going to be talking about as we lead into our Fellowship of the Ring minute by minute commentary is, of course, we got to talk about the first few episodes of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. So I don't know, Dane, what do you think? Should we just get right into the commentary, or should we talk about The Rings of Power first?
You know what? Let's talk about the Rings of Power and then talk about House of the Dragon together. So let's do the commentary.
I guess
first.
we'll do the two fantasy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna do a House of the Rings or Ring of the Dragon.
Yeah. How do we want to combine the two? The Rings of Dragons, or like I said, or House of the Rings. I like how House of the Rings sounds. To be honest.
The House of the Rings of the Dragons of Power.
So I think that's our official name of the segment now, where we're going to be reviewing these episodes.
Yeah.
House of the Rings.
Or the Dragon of the Rings.
Yeah. Either one. I guess we'll decide whatever comes out of our mouths when we're talking about it. So,
okay.
Yeah, let's start with Rings of Power first, because that is the one that just premiered last week. And I know I got to be careful because 3 episodes have premiered as we're recording today, but Dane, you've only seen the first 2. So
let's do the commentary first, then.
No, so
yeah,
you're a director on this episode, Dane. Just keep changing direction though where we want to go. So, as you could tell, we did not plan on how we're going to have this episode, the portions of this episode was going to be, but that's just how we roll.
Yeah, never planned.
Exactly. Okay, let's do the commentary. So grab your DVD, your VHS copy, your Betamax copy, your Laserdisc, your HD DVD copy, your Blockbuster membership card, your Netflix physical media, your DVHS copy, and your UMD copy, and of course, the way you get to see everything that we're going to talk about today, how it should be viewed, your VHS transferred to DVD copy that you made on your PC. So we're going to be going from minute 32 to minute 33. Are you ready, Dane?
Yes, I am.
All right. 3, 2, 1, play. As we start with a very worried look on Frodo's face as he's holding as we discussed last time, the very secure sealed envelope for the One Ring to be held in.
Oh, irresponsible, Gandalf.
Yeah.
Hey, just put it in an envelope. Just put it in a chest.
Well,
Forget about it.
I guess to be fair to Gandalf, he wasn't sure 100% that was the One Ring just yet. That's what he's going to go investigate, but still.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you have a hint, you might want to.
And we get a great shot of Fortress of Barad-dûr near Mordor. And our first appearance of the Ringwraiths.
One of the coolest looking things in Lord of the Rings. Yeah,
without question. I mean, it's so simple, but yet so effective and just so cool too. How they look.
This is all new, right? This is new footage. I mean, added
no, actually,
footage, right?
No, this is all in the theatrical cut. Yeah. As we stop on our first shot of Gondor, which when I first saw this for the first time didn't even know that it was Gondor and didn't know how big of a role it was going to play in the Return of the King. So it's kind of one of those things where like after seeing Return of the King and then go back to Fellowship, oh, so that's the same place. That's Gondor. Being the new Lord of the Rings fan that I was as these movies were coming out.
Why did they build their city right next to an active volcano? I mean, like Gondor is like right next to Mordor. It seems like.
Yeah, well,
why would you do that?
Maybe Gondor was first, and then as we're kind of learning in the Rings of Power how Mordor kind of got formed, we'll see what was actually first. But I'm not 100% sure on that. It would make sense if Mordor popped up after Gondor was already built.
You know what's weird, like with the Rings of Power, is like how they, it's now. You see, we're just gonna get straight into the Rings of Power discussion, I guess. But like, is the name of the cities in the show the same places as in the movies, but they just have different names?
I don't believe no. I'm pretty sure they're new locations. And again, I'll say this right off the bat. A lot of the stuff that we're seeing in the Rings of Power during the Second Age, I am not too familiar with. So I'm kind of going into it as a newbie too. I know certain things and a little bit of the history, but I'm kind of going in fresh too, where I kind of had that same question, Dane, going into it, because some of it sounds familiar, but a lot of the stuff is its own, especially in this last episode where we finally get to the city of Numenor. I know that is a big location in the history of the Lord of the Rings, and even just around the history of men too. It's such kind of a big moment in the Second Age of what happens to Numenor. So I was familiar with that one, and know for sure that is a different location.
But where Elrond is, that's not.
That's something. Yeah, that I kind of have that question too. Is that actually Rivendell, and it's just called something different right now because it's so long ago, and they eventually name it Rivendell? So that I am not sure on, to be honest. So because it did look pretty similar to Rivendell as we saw in Fellowship of the Ring, and it wouldn't surprise if that was the case. But at the same time too, it's so long ago. Middle Earth is big, so it could be a totally different location. But I did have that same thought as you did.
Yeah. My new favorite name in Lord of the Rings is Celebrimbor.
Yeah. I do like that name too.
Yeah.
Another one of the characters that I know of, but don't know too much of his. Because he does play a big role. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be considered a spoiler, but he is the one who kind of forges the Rings of Power. So.
Oh, he does?
He's going to be pretty important, yes.
Oh, that's what Elrond and Celebrimbor are sort of talking about. Like, we're making this big weapon thing.
Yeah, so that wasn't intentionally like the first thing they wanted to build together, but I think that's why I can't wait to see like how he gets either corrupted by Sauron or recruited by Sauron to forge the Rings of Power. That stuff I can't wait for.
Oh, I see. And just another question I have is like, are these new characters or are these characters that existed in, I don't know, like some manuscript?
It's kind of a mix of both. A lot of it are characters like Celebrimbor. He's obviously established.
Yeah.
And other characters we've seen there, but there are some new ones like
Arondir.
I'm sorry.
Arondir.
Yeah, he's definitely one. Yeah. And then Hellbrand, I think, is the one who travels with Galadriel, who saves her in the ocean. He's a brand new character.
I see.
But there have been some rumors and speculation of who he might become, which I think would be kind of cool if it does go that way. But we'll see, because there's definitely more to him that gets revealed in the third episode. I won't spoil it since you haven't seen it yet, but there's definitely going to be more revealed about his character in future episodes.
Aragorn's dad, right?
Not quite.
Grandfather. Because isn't like Aragorn like 85?
Yeah, he was in his 80s in
wasn't
the
he?
Fellowship.
Yeah. Wow.
Or I keep saying the Fellowship as that, even though it was kind of mentioned in the Two Towers movie. But I guess since Fellowship is my favorite of the three, that's the first name I go to when talking about it. But
So are people mad that there's new characters too?
I think at first there was like some trepidation as far as how they're gonna be used in the story and how they'll be interacting with the established characters. So of course there's always some, with this big of a fan base, there's always gonna be some concern from some of them. So yeah, I think there definitely was.
Great.
So yeah, let's get into our impressions of it. At least the first two episodes. So for me, just going into it, super excited. I was liking what I've seen from the trailers, and it was cool to get those first two episodes. And right off the bat, I was really impressed with how that first episode started off in that first half. Kind of starting off with Galadriel, her story, even showing her as a little girl, and going is her brother. Then we kind of get not quite the montage, like opening prologue that we got in Fellowship, but it did remind me of that though. Seeing that big battle in the first stage where they fought Morgoth, it was some cool visual scene. It looks like one of the foul beasts at the Nazgul ride take down an eagle, which was a really cool visual. I wish it was a little longer, but it definitely had the same vibe as that battle and the opening prologue of Fellowship of the Ring, and just some great visual, especially when Galadriel is kind of putting an elven helmet on that big pile of elven soldiers, kind of them. And I love that line where she says, before we didn't have a name for death, but now we have many names for it. Something to that effect, as elves were experiencing death for the first time in this big battle. So I loved all that stuff.
Yeah, so that's the question that I have, Tim. So the elves are in Valinor, which is like Valhalla or whatever.
Yeah, it's where everyone, like at the end of Return of the King, where Frodo goes to, Bilbo goes to. That's where they go.
So, right. So like, I feel like this part is going to just be me asking you questions, Tim.
Again, I might not have all the answers because it's part. Sure. I've still got to do it to the lore.
So like, when do you stop aging as an elf? So like, we see Galadriel as a kid, right? And then she ages into Galadriel that we see in the show. And then she eventually ages into Kate Blanchett, right? So like, when do you stop aging as an elf?
Yeah.
Because like all of them still look young. You know, I think the oldest one we see is Elrond, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like when do you stop aging as an elf? Or when you, at least physically, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess
maybe you don't know.
I don't know. Maybe when they hit like 40s, 50s, maybe the age that Kate Blanchett and Hugo Weaving were in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I guess that'd be the best way to go about it. But
yeah, right. So like, okay, so Morgoth is from Middle Earth, right?
There's kind of like those other realms, kind of, for lack of better words, kind of like heaven or something like that. I'm not sure if he's from there or not, because I know there's like different levels of like like the higher beings in the realms. I know him and Sauron were kind of on those lower levels of that, but I'm not 100% sure where exactly he fits in there.
Okay, but like, if you see, like, now we're really splitting hairs, Tim. Like, but if the elves left Valinor because their tree died, the tree of life or whatever.
Yeah. Actually, I believe there's 2 trees in there.
Yeah. So like, why did they go to Middle Earth where Morgoth is from?
I think when I got out of it, I mean, they went to war with them to try to stop them, to defeat them. and then I guess establish
but
being and living there.
Well, why did they all make the journey there? You know, like
I don't think all of them did, but because some were returning back there, as we saw at the end of the first episode. But again, I'm not sure how many actually left and how many stayed, and what that exact number is going to be.
I see. Okay, so like I just assumed because their homeland was dead already because they didn't have the tree. But like why did it? I mean, why did they send everybody to go fight the orcs instead of sending a battalion of troops? You know.
Well, they probably needed a big army to fight Morgoth's big army.
I see.
Yeah, it probably sounded like real Lord of the Rings noobs here. Like I said, there's probably answers for that. We just don't know. That's hopefully the stuff we'll learn as we're watching the series also.
Yeah, hopefully.
But yeah, so all that stuff with Galadriel.
You could have just said, because they needed all the main characters in Middle Earth.
Of course. Yeah.
But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so all that stuff with Galadriel in the beginning and showing her kind of just her mission to really stop the defeat of Morgoth, but to defeat Sauron who killed her brother, and to make sure he doesn't. They know he's hiding out there. Make sure he doesn't come into power. And I just love her determination to find him no matter the cost, and just kind of slowly kind of losing the support from her fellow elves. But I love that entire sequence in the snow and that fortress that they went to. It's cool visually, cool to see Galadriel in action to taking down that troll, and just again, even just the determination, even though all those her fellow elves there kind of said this was it, this is where they're stopping, and how she just wants to continue. So I loved all that stuff. Everything with Galadriel and Elrond, edited with the elves, I just was eating all that stuff. Galadriel and Elrond have some great scenes together, especially we're in that area where they carved those in the trees, like the fallen elves from the last war, and the visuals look great, and just some great conversations with the two of them. So all that stuff I really loved. So
yeah, I also like how, I mean, I'm not sure if this is how it is, but to me it sounds like Sauron is sort of like a lieutenant to Morgoth.
Yeah, he was like his second in command, pretty much.
Yeah, like how he's not the top evil guy, but then he grows into being that top evil guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's I was curious of the series because we know Sauron really comes into power in the Second Age. If we're I was wondering if we're going to see like the rise of Sauron into power into that. We kind of are, but it's like he's already established. I mean, we've got shots of him which looked awesome in Sauron armor. That looks pretty close to how we saw him in the Fellowship of the Ring. So he already is established as a big threat. He's just kind of in hiding right now, and just I'm looking forward to see how they use him, because Sauron is known to be someone who's could change appearance and work his way into like different parts of Middle Earth to kind of recruit and seduce those into his cause. And just seeing him how he forges into not only just the One Ring, but the other rings he creates for men, the elves, and the dwarves. I just really can't wait for the series to dive into that aspect of the Lord of the Rings history. That's going to be awesome. What I'm really excited for.
Yeah, and then you're gonna have to explain it to me.
If I could recommend a good YouTube channel to watch, Dane, with those great explanations to all this as they do episode recasts and just the history, is a channel called Nerd of the Rings. It's a great look and like deep dive into like the history, and for any questions you have on specific characters. I think for the most part he has a lot already regarding characters during this era in the Second Age to kind of get a refresher on. I don't know, that's what I've been doing as each episode comes out, which is really helpful.
He's not like a how come there's a black elf?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
I would have recommended if it was someone like that, and I wouldn't be watching.
Okay. You gotta make sure, Tim.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because that's kind of rare to find a good one. That's not like what I like about that channel. He's excited for the series. He has some
good,
some legit like criticisms and stuff about it, because he's like a diehard fan. You can tell he knows his stuff, but at the same time, isn't nitpicking about they're changing this and all that. It's just a good balance. So, but at the same time, it gives you all the information you need.
So what is his criticism? I just want something to, go in on, where it's not like, okay, this guy's just a hater.
No, yeah, just kind of like certain dialogue that kind of maybe doesn't fit with
Yeah.
certain characters and certain changes here. But again, it's not like the type of fanboy cries and nitpicking that annoys you. So.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out because for the most part I'm lost. It's sort of like House of the Dragon, where I'd read a Game of Thrones and I kind of knew what the story was. Like House of the Dragon, I have no idea. Same thing with Rings of Power. It's sort of like, yeah, I've seen the Lord of the Rings movies, but and the Hobbit movies, but I have zero idea about who most of these characters are. Um, you know,
Yeah.
just sort of like that. Yeah.
Yes, I'm kind of going in the same way. Like because I think Lord of the Rings history is a lot bigger than a lot of other franchises, including the Game of Thrones lore, which I'm more familiar with that era and where House of the Dragon's taking place and a lot of the history there than I am with what's taking place in the Rings of Power, just because it's just so huge and like a lot of stuff I think Tolkien tried to establish in that history there. So I understand where you're coming from on there. But yeah, so I loved all that stuff with the elves, Galadriel and Elrond, but here's the thing. I'll just say it right now. I really enjoyed the first few episodes we've gotten, but I'm just not loving the series as much as I want to at this
Oh,
moment. And the
oh,
big reason for that is just I think right off the gate, especially those first two episodes, there's too much stuff going on where there's too many plot lines in these first episodes. I believe there's like four of them. You got Galadriel's, you got Elrond, you got I'm blanking on the new elf's name, but
Rondir.
Arondir, yes, his story, kind of discovering, it's showing that orcs, like discovering orcs are still around. And then here's my biggest issue with it: the Harfoot storylines, the early versions of the Hobbits, and that to me is really takes away from the pace and just the slowing down of the storytelling I'm most invested in, which, like I said, is with Galadriel, Elrond, and the elves, and it's how I'm just not really into at the moment, and I felt too much time is being spent there. But at the same time, I think it could develop into a pretty cool storyline as far as who that stranger is, the guy who falls in from the meteor, and how his story can play out. Because I think it could be pretty cool if he is who I think he is. So we'll see how long that takes to get revealed. But right now, I just feel that storyline is just a little bit of a detriment to the series, each episode as a whole, where it just things aren't moving, I think, at a pace that I feel would benefit the show more, where it's just like I kind of find myself going, we're back to the Harfoot storyline where I really want to stay in with Galadriel stories or Elrond. So that's my biggest criticism of the series so far. It's been a slow burn in these first three episodes, but I think that slow burn is going to be worth it in the end once we get to some of the stuff that it's leading up to to say without spoiling too much for the third episode. But yeah, so that's kind of my biggest nitpick about it, or issue I have, where I'm just not really loving it as much as I want to, where it's just kind of going in too many different directions for me at the moment.
Well, that surprises me, Tim, because the Harfoot storyline is one of my favorites.
Really interesting.
Yeah, I really don't. I mean, it's sort of the opposite of what you were saying. Whereas I kind of don't like the Galadriel storyline.
Oh wow, yeah, we're definitely on the opposite ends of this.
Yeah, it's just like I kind of don't like storylines where we're chasing a phantom and we're just going from place to place. He's not there. He's not there. He's not there. He's not there. Right. And then she gets sort of sidetracked with the going to Valinor thing, and then gets sidetracked with the guy or those people on the barge. Made for really, really cool scene. She was swimming away while that sea worm, I think they call it, is attacking the barge. Made for a really cool looking scene, single take scene. But yeah, I mean, I know that guy's gonna play into the story, and Galadriel's gonna play into the story big. But I think for me, what I look for in Lord of the Rings, maybe it's familiarity with uh, the Lord of the Rings is, just these people that just exist in the world, that don't really have anything to do with anything. And just like the Lord of the Rings have the hobbits, this show has the Harfeets, right? um, and to me, that's the best storyline going right now, because like we know Galadriel has her quest, trying to stop Sauron. Elrond has his quest, trying to help Celebrimbor make the rings or whatever they're gonna do. But this storyline, it's sort of the unexpected one, where it's like you don't know where it's gonna go. It's gonna go. I mean, we know who the guy in the meteor is.
Is he though? So let's just get it right out of the bat. I mean, it's leading towards it could be Gandalf.
Right.
But
I mean, of course it's him. It's him.
But I see. I think I think it could be one of the other wizards. I think it's definitely a wizard, or the Istari as they call it. But I'm not 100% sure yet it's Gandalf.
Yeah, but you don't introduce a guy with a long white beard, with white hair, and wearing rags, and not
Yeah.
have him
And
be
well,
Gandalf.
the other reason too, I think it's going to be Gandalf, or this is going to establish his kind of fondness of hobbits later down the line, as we see in the Lord of the Rings time period in the Third Age. It kind of began here, so I think that would kind of be a cool way to establish that, where the first species he interacted with was the hobbits.
I see. So like, yeah, this is the unexpected one, where it's like you kind of don't know where it's going to go. And I do agree with you that they're sort of bleeding out the story for all of the episodes, or it's going to make sense towards the latter part of the season.
Yeah, definitely.
But this one is sort of the unexpected one, and I really like all the characters, all the Harfoots, the Harfeets, I don't know what the plural is for it. But yeah, I like all the characters. I like how they're not just hobbits; they're the precursor to the hobbits. It seems like they're migratory. They don't stay in one place.
Yeah.
They're trying to hide out from the other people. The other beings.
As you'll see in the third episode, that they're kind of a little brutal to how when they go on their migrations and travels in their caravans, like how they treat those who can't keep up. I'll just say that. I was like, man, that's kind of hardcore for this early version of the Hobbits.
They don't want to be found, Tim. They just want to be on their own. But my favorite character in Rings of Power is Nori. Because
she's a good character though. Yeah.
Again, she's written really well, and then she's like, she's the wild card, because what's going to happen with Galadriel, and Elrond. What's going to happen with Khazad-dûm. But yeah, you don't know what's going to happen with her. So that's what keeps me returning. And plus, the actress is really, really good. So yeah, sort of like the opposite of what you were saying, Tim, about like how you want to see the story form, and the big overarching story and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the Galadriel stuff isn't bad. It's like I said, like that scene where the sea worm attacks is pretty cool, and she's written really well. So yeah.
Yeah, another thing too I want to bring out is just how great the show looks as well. Just the locations, like I mentioned, Numenor looked fantastic, and probably my favorite location that we've got in the series so far is Khazad-dûm. That looked amazing, and just knowing what becomes of it when we get to the Fellowship of the Ring, it's just really cool to see it in all its glory. Just what a truly beautiful location and like city and community that the dwarves built in there, and you can see why Gimli was so excited to show it off to everyone in the Fellowship when that's his remembrance of how it looked. So I love that we got to see Khazad-dûm in all its glory in that second episode. It was fantastic.
And again, Tim, why are we overselling Khazad-dûm? Elrond is pitching Celebrimbor the moon, right? There's going to be a lot of food, a lot of drink. a lot of partying, and then they can't even get in the front door. And then Elrond has to do Elrond has to like do that that promise thing where they do the rock breaking thing.
I like
Again,
that. I liked how that's like kind of the way the dwarves have to make you prove your worth.
Why are we overselling that place? Gimli did it in Lord of the Rings movies. Elrond is doing it. You know, we should stop overselling Kazakh, you know, as a tourist destination. It's not going to be the way that you think it's going to be. But I do agree with you. Amazon put a lot of money into this, and that was one of my main concerns. Is like, is it going to be like a lesser thing? Like, are we going to see the holes in the CGI and all that stuff? But yeah, it looks really good. Like you said, Kazakh Doom looks amazing. That's probably one of my favorite locations in the show so far. And the one thing that stuck out to me was the makeup on the dwarves. It's really good. They're really changing their faces, and like to me that's one of the things that stood out.
Yeah, it just looked like, again, how it looked real close how they looked in the movies, the dwarves.
Yeah.
Though I will say, I was talking to someone at work about this. The one thing I was a little disappointed was that, remember how Gimli describes the dwarf women as having beards, where sometimes you can't tell a male dwarf from a female dwarf. But none of the female dwarfs had beards at this time in costume. Maybe it's like something they evolve into later when they get to the third age where they have beards. But I thought that would have been cool to see.
So is this the Durin that Gimli is talking about?
Yeah, because
Durin?
Durin's, that's the name that gets passed down to each dwarven ruler, I guess, in there. Maybe you hear the name Durin mentioned a lot in the Hobbits, like Durin's Bane or Durin's, like when Durin's Moon, I believe it's called, or where the moon had to shine on the light, or the door entryway into I'm blanking on the name of the location now. I'm doing horrible today with my Lord of the Rings lore and information. But where Smaug was hidden into with all the treasure, the location to sneak in there was like Durin's Moon. I don't know if it's called Durin's Moon. It was called Durin something though. Or again, I'm sounding like such a noob, but we've heard that name tons of times in the third Asian in the Lord of the Rings timeline.
So like Durin, the prince Durin, because his dad is King Durin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the criticisms I heard from the Lord of the Rings, where it's like there wasn't really, like, you can't be named Durin, like two Durins existing at the same time, like it's something special where like the dwarf king they would like only name their sons Durin if they actually looked like resemblance of, I guess, the original Durin, and they never had it where there was two around at the same time. So that was kind of like a different thing that they did. Not a huge deal, but one little, I guess, dwarven lore that they changed a bit.
That's it. The show's ruined for me too.
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
So
not watching anymore.
So they're playing a bigger part in this story then.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna help you forge the rings or build your big tower.
Yeah, because there was like that end shot for the second episode where they like opened that chest and like there's this big shining light coming out of it. I believe that's going to be like the first discovery of Mithril, which of course they find in Khazad-dûm in the Mines of Moria later on.
Yeah.
That obviously we get to establish that that's where it came from, and it looks like they're finding it for the first time here in that episode.
Oh, I see. And then they dig too deep.
Durin's Day, that was the title. That was the name I was referring to. That's
Durin's
where
what? Day?
Durin's Day. That's where the first day of the last moon of autumn on the threshold of winter. That shining light from the moon is what reveals the key location to enter into that location. So yeah, it was bugging me as I was talking about it. I know it's that's to do with the moon. But I know it's not called Durin's Moon, so Durin's Day is the official name for that event.
You couldn't let it go, too.
No, I didn't. I know. That sounded too much like like I said, a Lord of the Rings noob and idiot. Whereas like I just watched The Hobbit not too long ago too, and I should know what it was called. So yeah, that's why it was bugging me. I had to get it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, that's our overall impressions for the Rings of Power. I'm really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to each episode every week. The third episode was probably the best one yet, in my opinion, because in one of the storylines they took a step away to where certain areas have a little bit more room to breathe, where it wasn't going in too many directions as the first two episodes were, and establishing some stuff that we're eventually going to see play out in future episodes that I'm looking forward to seeing. So yeah, really enjoying it. It has the potential to be really great. So hopefully by the end of the first season, I'll end up loving it as I'm hoping to, but I'm just not quite at that level yet, but looking forward to seeing each and every episode.
Well, it's definitely a slow burn. Is what my impression of it is. It's not such a fast paced show because they're trying to build out so much. But yeah, I love it. I have no complaints. But again, I'm not a Lord of the Rings diehard fan like you are. But yeah, just as a casual watcher, I really like it.
Yeah. So yeah, well, I can't remember how many episodes there are in the season, but I think it should be like the standard, like 9 or 10. So
8.
It's 8. Okay, so a little
Yeah.
less than I think most Amazon shows. So man, so we're gonna be halfway through next week already. So hopefully things start again picking up as far as where the direction they're going to, as far as what's being built up and established in these early episodes. But I'll be there watching, no, without question.
Where is this film? Do you know?
No, I don't. Not offhand. I don't believe it's New Zealand though, or is it? I don't know. See, now I'm doubting myself again. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Let's see. Scotland?
Maybe. I'm just gonna have to look it up. It's like it was in
New Zealand.
It was New Zealand. Okay.
Yeah.
Thought I remember reading somewhere that it wasn't, but I don't know. Maybe I read wrong.
Yeah, well, if you're gonna film a Lord of the Rings thing, you gotta film it in.
Yeah, where else
New Zealand
is a better spot to go? It's obviously already proven it's the best location to have Middle Earth be set in.
Can't film it in, California.
Sure, you could if you want to at some very basic part of Middle Earth, like some desert area.
And have the rest of your scenes take place on a green screen.
Yeah, they probably are going to need to. All right, so that's our first impression of Rings of Power. I look forward to hear what you think about the third episode, Dane. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, because like I said, I think that one's probably my favorite episode so far. But now we can move into the House of the Dragon in the last two episodes, because we only talked about the first one on our previous episode. So I'll let you kick this one off, Dane. What did you think of the last two episodes?
I am really liking this show and where they're taking it. I mean, you could telegraph it, from a mile away, but you knew that Rhaenyra's friend was going to be the new queen.
Yeah.
Right.
From the moment the first episode where her father tells her to go comfort the king, you knew right away.
Yeah, and creepily wear one of your mother's dresses.
Yeah,
that was a little weird. But yeah, I really like where the show is going. So, hold on, I'm trying to look up the queen's name. Oh, why can't I? Alicent, right? Yeah, I I'm really liking that story in particular about like the succession. Like, where is it gonna go?
Yeah.
It's gonna go to the son, Alicent's son, or is it gonna go to Damon, or is it gonna go to Rhaenyra? So that's probably my favorite story. And um, the, the one criticism I do have of the show is the this crab feeder storyline.
Okay.
I just don't get why they introduced this in the story. Is it gonna? I mean, of course, it's gonna play into the political part of the story, but like, why would you wrap it up in 3 episodes, right?
Yeah.
Why would you wrap it up so quick? Like, if I mean, because it sounded like a really big threat, at least in that first episode
Mhm.
with the sea snake, right? He was saying like, oh, this is this is gonna uh mess up not only our trade but like our rule and our power. So like why did they wrap it up so easily? But um but anyway, yeah, like I really like this show, Tim. I probably like it better than the Rings of Power.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement with you. I'm loving House of the Dragon, and I will agree about the whole thing with the crab feeder. Like you said, I felt it ended kind of abruptly. We're like, oh, this is like that whole storyline's over in 3 episodes. Like I thought it was going to be a season long threat, but at the same time, I guess was kind of mainly meant to establish like having Damon kind of have victory over him and make his way back into King's Landing, and I guess try to establish himself back into, I guess, I don't want to like, I'm not sure if it's going to go to where he's going to use that to make a case for him to be the rightful heir and to take the throne, if that's going to be something that he feels this is going to help him his cause in getting that. But definitely at least
Yeah,
get
of
back,
course.
definitely kind of get himself back in the mix as far as being amongst all those in King's Landing, and with Viserys again in his rule. So maybe that was the catalyst of that to get him established back into that group. But that was such a great sequence, that ending in the last episode. I
Yeah,
do wish though we actually saw him fight the crab feeder instead of just him going in and then see him coming out with just half of the body of the crab feeder. It would have been a cool fight to see, but I just love that whole sequence of him getting the note that Viserys was going to send him help, and he didn't want any of his help, and that's kind of what caused him just to go down there alone to offer himself up as a surrender. But it was just a trap to draw out all the crab feeder's army, and just a great moment of dodging all those arrows, even though some hit him, and just draw out their army while the rest of his army and the Valerian army go and attack, and then just seeing another dragon just easily take down all those archers and most of the crab feeders army. And it's just really cool to see the dragons used in actual, like, in war, because I know we've seen dragons in action in Game of Thrones, but to actually be used in war as part of like a war strategy as well. We got that a little bit towards the end, but just kind of knowing that that is a big part of, once at least the royal family, the Targaryens, are going into war, they have the dragons at their disposal to use in these battles. And it was just great to see it on display here. And even at the beginning of the third episode, it was just really cool, where you see it, Damon's trying to call out the crab feeder. He takes out some of his men. You get that poor soldier who was taken captive, part of the Targaryen army, and he gets all excited when he sees Damon's dragon. I think he's going to be saved, but unfortunately, he just gets crushed by the foot of the dragon, who probably didn't even see him. So just like a great opening and a great closing to that third episode, focusing on Damon and his, as he's fighting in that war with the crab feeders. So I loved all that stuff. But then, as you mentioned too, just the stuff with Rhaenyra and her story, and just everything that's she's going through. And you could like really understand her frustration as we see her in these 2 episodes, where she's been named the heir, but yet she's kind of still being treated as just like a cupbearer in that second episode. And then dealing with the a birth of her half brother Aegon II, and just what that means for the realm, and those already trying to get Viserys to name him the actual heir of the Iron Throne, since he is his firstborn male son, and just everything that's being thrown into this, what's going to be a crazy period for the Targaryens, and what's eventually is going to lead to the big civil war of the Dance of Dragons. So I just love how it's all being set up here, and the kind of the characters and are being put in place on the chessboard, so to speak, which is cool to see. And I really do like, and this is something we were wondering about in the first episode, as we knew there's going to be a time gap later on, and we're seeing it in each episode. I mean, from episode 1 to episode 2 is about a 6-month time gap, and now in this one it was about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Was it 3? Okay, yeah. And so I really like how they're doing that, and it's not kind of this non-linear storytelling where we get flashbacks when she's older and then we get flash forwards or stuff like that. I do like the pace that it's moving. We're getting time jumps in each episode, and it's flowing very well too. It's not something where you feel like you're missing a big chunk of their story or some big events that happen in those 3-year gaps. It's just kind of feeling like a natural progression of just where things are. So or how things are taking place in that time period. And if there was something big that happens, they'll mention it. So yeah, just it's a great flow. I think the series is having kind of the opposite of what I was talking about with the Rings of Power, and just how it's focusing on the characters that it really needs to in telling this story, and just great character moments too. In the second episode, I really love that scene on Dragonstone where Rhaenyra goes to confront Daemon on what he did as far as stealing one of the dragon eggs from King's Landing, because it's a Targaryen tradition to keep a dragon age, or I keep saying dragon age, it's dragon egg, with a newborn Targaryen baby, and he wanted that for his son that he kind of lied about saying was being born, just kind of to, I guess, just to make things more of a headache for Viserys and to be more of a thorn in his side. But it was just such a great kind of showdown and confrontation between those two, and yet how at that moment they're at odds, but they still there's a connection between those two, and they still, as her uncle and his niece, there's still that family love that they have, I think, and respect they have for each other, which we know is eventually going to blossom into them becoming husband and wife once we get more to the Dance of the Dragons time period. But I love that moment between them two. Just visually, it was cool to see both of their dragons kind of come in and just make their presence known. I just love seeing the Targaryens on their dragons, kind of in their peak period, so to speak, where dragons were common here. So just a lot of great stuff. Though I will say there was a brutal moment in the third episode, that hunting scene where they captured that stag and Viserys tried to kill it. He couldn't do it on the first try, and you hear the screams of the stag. It's like, come on, Viserys, just put it out of its misery. It's just the idea of hunting in general. I hate it.
Yeah. It's weird. I don't care if a character gets cut in third and dragged out of a cave. I do care seeing an animal die.
Oh, I'm with you 1,000%.
Or a dragon. Yep. I just can't get through it. I can't. It's the most heartbreaking thing. I don't care seeing Ned start getting beheaded. Right? Sure, it was shocking, but
yeah.
I
know I felt more bad. It was harder to see. We didn't even see it, but when he had to kill Lady in the second episode, that was brutal too.
That was the most brutal death in that first season.
Yes, I would agree.
But yeah, I have a question or I have a statement and a question. So
okay.
let's start off with the statement. My favorite name of all of Game of Thrones so far. We got Rhaenyra, we got Viserys, we got Alicent, we got all these cool different names, right? Corlys, Otto Hightower, right? My favorite name of all time so far is Jason Lannister. You couldn't think of a better name for that.
The most basic of basic names.
It's like, oh, okay, so we got a Tim Lannister,
Might as well have a Dane Lannister.
Yeah.
Though actually, Dane Targaryen has a nice ring to it.
Dane Targaryen. There's no Dane in Game of Thrones, right?
I think there is up there. Right? There is Sir Arthur.
Yeah,
Dane.
Arthur Dane.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my God, my most favorite character of all of.
He was known as the greatest swordsman in the realm. Like I even watched like a best like who was the best Game of Thrones fighter video, and I believe he was number 1 on that list.
Yeah, of course he is, Tim. Make a fighting game, and he's going to be the best one. He's going to be the one you always go to. He's going to be the Ryu of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, there are no Tims, I think, in Westeros. I haven't heard one.
Timothy?
Yet.
Timothy? No?
No, not that I can recall.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe there'll be a Tim Stark down the line.
Okay, so on to my question, right? So, like, the third episode was the first episode that we don't get a scene where Viserys has health problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the sores and like the cuts and stuff, right? Is that what leads to his death? I know you said you're more familiar with the Song of Ice and Fire.
Not.
Is that how he dies?
I don't believe so. I think he does die kind of an old age, but I don't believe it is because of like any of those injuries or those not injuries, but those infections or whatnot that he has. Yeah. Actually, if you notice, in the scene where he's talking to Alicent, kind of towards the end, you see like 2 of his fingers are cut off that we saw infected in the second episode.
Really?
Yeah.
I see. So those maggots didn't help then.
Apparently not.
You had to cut off his fingers.
Yeah. So I guess it kind of. I don't know if they're saying that that's kind of taken care of for right now. So now that they're cut off, but we'll see if anything else crops up that he has to deal with. But I guess as of right now, he's okay from that particular infection that he was dealing with.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, what is the meaning of that? What's the symbolism? Is that going to play into the story? Is that just to show that he's sickly?
Yeah.
You know? Or
maybe.
Yeah.
But I do like what we're seeing of Viserys too, because he's a good king, or he wants to do what's best. He's not like an evil king or anything like that, but it's just kind of such a strange time. Like, the whole thing with the succession and heir is just like where maybe he's not making the right decision. He means well, but some of his decisions may not be for the best, especially when you got all those different advisors offering their opinions and whatnot and what he should do. And you kind of got a sense of just how annoyed he was with it on that hunt and celebrating Aegon's name day there. Just how he doesn't want to deal with that right now. But whenever there's an opportunity for someone to throw their 2 cents, they will do it towards him.
Yeah, he seems like a good king that just makes the wrong decisions. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. And I like that line where he's like, I think he's talking to Alicent, and he's like, I can't please one person without angering another.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
It's just that over and over and over again. And he can't find, a peaceful resolution to it. So yeah, that's an interesting character trait too, where it's like, like I was saying, it's just he can't make the right decisions. He's a good guy, but he just can't do it. And it leads him to appear weak. You know how like Otto was saying, like, oh, if the king does help with Daemon's war, it would make him seem weak, because why didn't he go there in the first place and take care of the problem? But then he ends up doing that at the end of the third episode, and so like even that's gonna play into like his bad decision making,
Yeah, because seeing in the next preview, like we're talking about with Daemon coming back to King's Landing and kind of probably winning that war now, and him kind of doing it almost single-handedly, at least defeating the crab feeder. That's gonna probably give him more cause to try to make his case to be the next ruler of Westeros on there. So yeah, it was him sending that letter and offering that help is what spurred Daemon to do what he did in that episode, which probably gave him a lot of glory amongst the soldiers there. So yeah, I think it is going to kind of come back to bite him a bit in this next episode.
Yeah, and man, I feel sorry for Rhaenyra. She's sort of tied to what Viserys does, right? And she can't really speak out for herself. So
yeah. And real quick, Dane, I don't know if I asked you. So are you kind of familiar what goes down in the actual Dance of Dragons Civil War that this is all leading to, or are you kind of?
No. No, I don't.
So I got to be
Yeah.
careful what I say because if they follow closely to what happens in the books, then I know where everything's going to end for these characters. So I got to be careful not to reveal that type of stuff to you as we're talking about it.
Have they sort of hit the sort of story points leading up to the Civil War so far? Okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm just curious. Like, because we know we're going to get a time jump. Are we actually going to get the start of that war in this season, or is it maybe something that's going to kick off in season 2, or maybe it really kicks off in the final episode of season 1, and then we really dive into it in season 2? I'm just curious, like, how long is it going to be till we actually get to that point where the Targaryens are at war with each other?
Yeah. What you know? What? Just tell me. Like what happens in this Dance of the Dragons?
So it's basically Rhaenyra and, as you just saw, Aegon II as a little baby here. They go to war with each other. I think one is known as like the Green, which was Rhaenyra, and Aegon's going to be the Black, as far as the different Targaryen factions. And just a lot of betrayal, a lot of. It's just, again, I don't want to go into too spoiler details as far as what happens to the characters, but what starts it is once Viserys dies. Alicent names Aegon the next king, because they're still at King's Landing, because Rhaenyra is at Dragonstone during that time, and she does. I don't believe she finds out about Viserys' death until a little later. Once Aegon is established as the king, she's all like no, I was named the heir, and the throne is rightfully mine, and that's where the battle really starts, and the Civil War begins.
So it's not with Daemon then.
No, yeah, that's the thing too. That's I didn't want to be a spoiler, but Daemon is not necessarily involved, or he is definitely involved, but he's not the one that kind of starts it as far as, no, I should be the king. He's actually, spoiler here. Do you want me to say, Dane? Or
Sure.
Okay. He pretty much, as I mentioned earlier, him and Rhaenyra get married, so he fights on the side of Rhaenyra. Yeah. So he's involved in a lot of the battles, but he's fighting for Rhaenyra, not for himself to be king in the Dance of Dragons.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, I mean, you had told me that Rhaenyra and Daemon get married, so kind of saw that one coming. But
yeah, so for those,
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so for those going into it not knowing what happens, that kind of might be a surprise, where the show is obviously setting up for Daemon kind of being the main like threat to take over the throne from Rhaenyra and amongst everyone else, but it's only going to end up leading them to being closer and then eventually getting married.
I see. So Kristen, I forget his last name. Kristen is tossed to the wayside.
So yeah, digging what we've gotten so far in these first three episodes of House of the Dragon, and cannot wait to see more of it starting tomorrow as we're recording this episode. So looking forward to have 2 more to talk about on our next episode in 2 weeks. So yeah, with that, there's one big thing that we have to talk about before we end this episode, Dane, and you probably know what it's going to be. Because
what is it going to be, Tim?
How can we have an episode and not celebrate the 30th anniversary of Batman the Animated Series, which we just got a few days ago? And I don't know what's more hard to believe, Dane, that Batman the Animated Series is 30 years old, or it's been 10 years since we've had our episode covering the 20-year anniversary of Batman the Animated Series. It's been 10 years since we did that, which is hard for me to even believe.
I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't look back and on our 20-year anniversary of Batman the Animated Series, because man, we've been doing this a long time.
Yeah,
we've been doing this a really long time.
But it's too late for that, Dan, because I knew I wanted to talk about the 30th anniversary, so I went back and listened to a bit of that episode that we did 10 years ago, kind of what we talked about there. And it's, basic stuff, our favorite episode, when we first saw the series, the villains, the music, the iconic voices. I mean, we covered all that stuff, so I just don't want to repeat and talk about all that stuff again. But one thing I wanted to see, if you remember, if kind of what we felt then still holds up now 10 years later as far as our favorite episodes go. Do you remember what you said was your favorite episode on that one? And if it is still your favorite episode now?
Probably not. My favorite episode currently right now is if you're so smart, why aren't you rich?
Mm. Yeah, I remember you talking about that on
definitely
our
not.
episodes ago.
Definitely not. So okay. So what was it, Tim?
Yours was yes, that's it. See, you remember Perchance to Dream.
Yeah, that's what I figured it was. Yeah, definitely not my favorite. But how can you really pick one, right?
It is hard, I know, but
and stick with it, you know.
Yeah, that I guess if you watched it as much as I have over the last 30 years, you could kind of pick know where certain episodes rank. Because for me, mine is still the same as it was on that episode we recorded 10 years ago. That's why I wanted to listen back to see if it was what it is now, because it's still the same. Robin's Reckoning Part 1 and Appointment in Crime Alley. Those are my top two. And I still maintain to this day that Appointment in Crime Alley is such an underrated episode of Batman the Animated Series. I just watched it again on the official 30th anniversary date this past Monday, and God, it's such a good episode. Just love how it goes into the first time in the animated series that this really went into Bruce and how he celebrates, or not celebrates, but how he acknowledges the death of his parents every year and what he does to honor them, bringing the roses to Crime Alley, and just everything with Leslie Tompkins in that episode is so beautifully done. It's just amazing on every level. Storytelling, animation, the music in that episode just might be my favorite. It's just so underrated. I don't think it gets the recognition that it deserves. So 10 years later, I said, or 10 years ago, I said that, and I'm still saying that 10 years later. I'm banging on that drum that Appointment in Crime Alley needs to get more respect than it currently does. But yeah, so it hasn't changed for me. Robin's Reckoning is still my all-time favorite, and Appointment in Crime Alley is not too far behind.
You know what has sort of made me, or what I've realized after, all these years intermittently watching Batman the Animated Series is how they ended some of their episodes, right? So, like, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich? It's a guy that is, can't sleep, is constantly looking over his shoulder, is constantly scared, sleeps with a shotgun next to his bed. And then it's sort of like, okay, well, we'll see you guys next week. We'll see you kids next week.
Yeah.
And then, like Heart of Ice, it's a guy depressed in prison, grieving over his wife, Yeah. And then, okay, we'll see you guys next week. See you kids next week. It's weird how they ended their episodes. It's so depressing. And to think that this was a children's cartoon, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and that fits in perfectly with why I love Appointment in Crime Alley so much. That ending is probably my favorite ending out of all the episodes, where, I mean, you're seeing Batman look at the spot where his parents were murdered and just sit there in silence as Leslie Tompkins goes to hug him to comfort him during what's obviously an emotional moment for Batman. And just how the music plays there, and then not only do you see Leslie and Batman in that moment in the present, this how the episode beautifully transitions into that photograph of Leslie first comforting Bruce when he was a kid the night his parents died. I mean, like, as you said, it's something that's just so beautifully done and for a mature audience, but when it's designed for a kid's show, it's just something we've never seen before in animation, children's animation for that time. And it's just it's timeless. That's what my big takeaway on this is. And I'm sure I'm going to say it for every big anniversary it has. 30 years ago, this series came out, and just watching a few episodes again, it doesn't feel like it's 30 years. It's timeless. It's such a brilliant idea to kind of not put it in any specific time period. That's what's so genius about it. It has that moment where it feels like it's in the 30s and 40s, but yet there's some modern technology in there, like TVs and phones, like computers. It's just such a great blend that gives it a timeless feel, which is going to make it feel fresh and new, no matter how old the series gets. And 30 years old now, I think I could definitively say that that's going to be the case forever, long after we're all gone in the series. It's going to be, as the series continues to be remembered for the classic that it is. And one thing I'll say here too, which I think on that 20-year anniversary episode we did, how I always say this, my favorite interpretation of Batman, the greatest animated series of all time. But now I could easily and definitely say it's just my favorite TV show of all time. It's nothing comes close. Well, I shouldn't say comes close, but nothing quite reaches that level of how special this series means to me as just a fan of the character, just great storytelling, and just making me really appreciate the medium of animation like no other show did before, and just how the stories, again, just continue to be some of the best storytelling you can experience in any TV show. And just the production on it, like the music, the vocal performance, everything about it is just top tier. And no show impacted me quite as much as Batman the Animated Series does. And it just, every time I watch it, just brings back good memories of me being a 9-year-old kid watching it for the first time and just being truly immersed and just blown away every day once we got a new episode. It just makes me reflect on a fun time during my life during that era, and just how it continues just to be something that I'll never ever get tired of seeing. And just after seeing it countless times, I've done plenty of rewatches. I've watched certain episodes so many times where I lost count of how many times I've actually watched them, and I just never get tired of it. Like I said, it's the perfect definition of timeless, and I can't think of anything better way to describe it on its 30-year anniversary, and describing it as a timeless classic. Not just in the animation medium, but just for the TV medium in general.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here wondering, like, is there any other, thing, TV show or movie or whatever, where they take like an existing IP that everybody knows, right, and then make it wholly original and sort of change the way that the medium is used?
Yeah, it's hard for me to pick anything other.
Like I can't really think of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, so many things that never were done before. Like I go back to even some that maybe doesn't necessarily get the credit as it should. Just the music, how using a full orchestra for each and every episode, it's just crazy and insane to think that that's how they were doing it for a children's program. And it's funny because I was listening to the soundtracks while at work on the 30th anniversary, and my coworker who we're in the same office area, and he just goes, "Wow, this is like Batman the Animated Series kind of before his time." He just goes, "Wow, this is kind of crazy to think about how this type of music, this grand orchestral score, was used for a children's show." And it's like, it's pretty impressive. I go, "Yep," like you don't have to tell me that, but that's what was something that set it apart from the rest of the shows going on at that time. So just some, as I don't want to say as simple to make it sound like it's not something. Yeah, I'm kind of mumbling over my words here. I'm sorry. But it's just like, I don't want to make it sound like the music is not important, but I just don't think it gets talked about enough, just how great that score was when you talk about Batman the Animated Series and all the great things that it delivered and did so beautifully. And I think the music is a big part of that. It just goes to show just how so much love and care went into the show from the very beginning, and how it continued throughout the course of the series' entire run.
Yeah, and I mean, also, like I was saying, like you're taking something that existed before, right? Like, so the Looney Tunes cartoons did the same exact thing. They used like a full orchestra to do their music, right? But then you're making it wholly your own, this TV show about Batman, something that we all know. So it's like sort of like the same exact thing, but it's wholly original, and I don't think it can ever be replicated. It's not something that you can sort of do again.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. Even with Batman the Caped Crusader, being the next Batman animated series out. Hopefully we'll still get it. I mean, Bruce Timm's obviously involved, and there's going to be some similarities, but at the same time too, I know that it's not going to capture that same magic that Batman the animated series had. It's just impossible, really. It's perfection in my opinion. There could be things. I'm expecting the Cape Crusader to be great, but I can't go into it expecting, this is going to be just as perfect and great as Batman the animated series. It's just impossible. Wow, everything lined up so beautifully with that series. Everything came together to create something truly, truly special that has proven to stand the test of time as just to be amongst the best of the best. Not just when it comes to Batman, but like as we said, just a TV show in general, in my opinion.
Yeah, Tim. So why are you giving Rings of Power such a hard time if you think that the Cape Crusader isn't going to be as good as Batman the animated series? You know what I mean? So like you have Lord of the Rings, which of course it's not going to be as good as Lord of the Rings. But then you're bashing Rings of Power. What's up with that, Tim?
Oh, so now I'm bashing it, huh?
Yeah.
Really
now
enjoying it. It's me saying I really enjoyed it equals bashing it just because I don't love it. Well, we'll see if Batman the Cape Crusader has 4 different diverging storylines in going on in the 20 minute to half hour episode. If it doesn't, it might have a problem, but I don't think so.
Also, we'll see if we actually see it.
That's sadly that is a question we still have to ask ourselves if it's actually going to happen, which is still depressing to think about.
Unfortunately.
So on the 30th anniversary date on September 5th, I did put out a tweet on our Bat-Fans account just to see. I made it hard. I asked if you have to pick your single all-time favorite episode because, as we said, it is hard and we can name off a few episodes as our favorite, but I wanted to make it a little hard to see if those could pinpoint their exact favorite episode. So we got a few responses on here where first, Noe Ruiz says, Heart of Ice was really good, but as I said, tough to choose one. Then the Gotham Club Crawl said Trial as one of the better episodes and their favorite, and which is a great choice. Trial is such an awesome episode that features all the villains pretty much from the series, which actually is, little Batman animated series trivia, was the original plan to be the first Batman animated series movie. It was kind of the idea and plot was to have all the villains evolved around that story of Batman on trial, but everything worked out because it made for a great episode, and then we got an amazing movie with Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So I say it worked out pretty well with Trial being its own episode and not an actual movie. And then Conway Cal L said if he's allowed to choose a 2-part episode, which I will allow it, he's going to say Robin's Reckoning, which of course I'm going to agree with. And then as far as single episode, it's If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich? So Conway Cal-El agrees with both of us, Dane, as far as what our absolute favorite episodes are.
Conway is my best friend now. for saying If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich?
Yes, and again, you can't go wrong with so many of these episodes that being your favorite. Of course, there's some that aren't up to par as some of the best, but still, that's definitely the small margin when you compare it to all the amazing episodes that are in this series run. So yeah, I guess with that's going to do it for this one. Again, I think it's just great that we're able to celebrate another huge milestone for Batman the Animated Series. We did the 20th, we did the 30th, and hopefully we're still around doing this for the 40th.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not, because we can't be doing this in 20 years.
I think we got to make that our goal so we can celebrate the 50th. I mean, how amazing is that going to be?
Yeah, you're right.
So here's to the next 2 decades of the Bat-Fans podcast.
Can you imagine when it's the 50th anniversary of Batman the Animated Series?
It's hard to imagine right now, but It was hard to imagine the series being 30th or the series 30th anniversary, and here we are.
Yeah.
So let's slow down the flow of time for a bit. Let's have time move at as slow a pace as the Rings of Power is right now. The first three episodes.
Oh man. You see, that's what but that is what I don't understand, right? We are doing commentary on a 3-hour movie, 3-hour plus movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is only one of the movies that is 3 hours, and I think Return of the King is 4 hours, right?
Yeah, the extended cut is definitely 4.
So why are you Lord of the Rings fans complaining about, the story and everything? Like introducing all these characters and spending time with all these different characters.
It's not about the story, it's about the flow and the pace. I mean, it's not about the time length either. It's just how things flow. Certain things flow better than others. And right now I just feel Rings of Power just a little bit lacking in having a good flow and pace to it.
Okay, so what about in the Two Towers where some reason you are at the Tree Congress, the Tree Senate?
See, and
What
that
about
is
those
something
scenes?
that is one of the knock I'll put on the Two Towers. That's where that movie slows down a bit in its pacing.
Okay.
So yes, that is a valid criticism I have for an otherwise almost another perfect movie. I mean, Fellowship of the Ring I consider perfect. Two Towers is pretty close, but it is some of the stuff with the Ents that and Treebeard that I feel slow it down a bit.
Okay, so it's official. You heard it here. Tim does not like the Two Towers.
I guess, yeah, that's what it means now. You heard it here first. I'm a Two Towers hater now. Thanks a lot, Ents. Yeah, you ruined it.
Tree Congress.
I believe
That's
the exact term is an Ent moot.
Ent moot.
Yeah.
Wow, I actually like that better. Instead of Tree Congress.
Yeah.
Ent moot. Yeah. Okay, so Tim, we're gonna have an Ent moot. Is what I'm gonna be calling a serious discussion about the podcast.
There we go. Yeah.
We're gonna sit here for 11 hours and talk about nothing.
What was it like? They just all that time they just agreed to consider
To
their
have the
request.
meeting?
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
They agreed to meet or something.
Yeah. They agreed to listen to their request. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of my favorite scenes from Two Towers is the Ents. The Ent scenes. Tim. Forget the big battle at. Don't tell me, Tim. Don't tell me. Don't you ever tell me.
The one time you don't want me to answer a question for you.
Because it is called the Battle of
Come on, Dane.
the Bastards.
You're mixing your franchises there.
Okay, the Battle of the Bulge.
I'm afraid not.
The Battle of Helm's Deep. I got it, Tim. I got it. That was it, right?
That is the main battle of the Two Towers. I thought you were trying to name the battle that the Ents had with Sauron.
No.
Okay.
No, not that.
Because I'm not sure if that actually has a battle name, but it's just, it takes place in Isengard. So
The Battle of Isengard. There you go, Tim. The Battle of Helm's Deep. I got it, Tim. I got it. I know Lord of the Rings better than you do.
Well, I guess you have to now, since I'm considered a hater of the Two Towers and I'm a hater of the Rings of Power now. So yes, I defer to you as Lord of the Rings expert now.
No. If you were a hater of Rings of Power, you would have a totally different argument about why you didn't like it.
Yeah, which it's not worth getting into.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess with that, that'll do it for this episode. some fantasy and Batman the Animated Series talk is always a win in my book. So, as always, Dane, I'll throw it to you for the outro.
All right, just go over to BatmanUniverse.net, Facebook.com/BatmanUniverse, Twitter handles at BatmanUniverse, Tim's Twitter handles at TimG311. Also, his Twitter name is Tim Hates Lord of the Rings.
You're not going to let that go, are you? Not until I say a Ring of Power episode is absolutely perfect. I will be considered a hater.
My Twitter handle is at DaneSaysBanana. My other Twitter name is Dane is the Lord of the Rings expert. And the show's Twitter handle is at Batman Universe. At Batman's podcast. Rate your reviews on iTunes, and if you want to email the show, you can email the show at batfans@gmail.com. So with that, we say it in every single episode of Tim.
We love each and every one of you with all of our hearts, despite what Dane says about Tim being a Lord of the Rings hater.
Oh, that's a good ending, Tim. That's a good one. See you guys next time.
See you next time, everybody.
Yeah.